You have someone who breaks you, but because they have a good amount of experience, they're able to put you back together. But once you're put back together, you are a different animal now. You have qualities, you have like powers you didn't have before. You know, it's kind of like, let's say, and let me kind of just inject a little bias there. Imagine you have a man and a woman in a relationship and they've been together for about 5 or 6 or 10 years. The man one day looks at the woman and says, I don't want to be with you anymore. Whatever the reasons may be, irrelevant. Or vice versa. If a man hears such a statement from a woman, he'll get sad, he'll get angry, he'll probably go into coffee shops or bars or churches, or, you know, we'll go to International and 12th around midnight, pick someone up, take him home, and somehow try to bring some comfort. You know, they'll sleep with someone, they'll drink or they'll smoke, whatever the case may be. That's what men usually do. Women, on the other hand, depending on their background and their history, oftentimes if they have a modicum amount of maturity, what women usually do is they don't want to share their bodies with anyone. They don't want to share. They may gossip about the relationship, but for the most part, they keep their body in this very tight sanctuary. And so they get really, really sad. Eventually, they'll get into depression. They don't want to talk to anyone. They're not going to date. And so if they're lucky, if they happen to have the right intellectual components, right reflective components, they will slowly begin to examine the relationship. And hopefully from there, they'll examine how men are wired. They'll examine their own emotions. They'll examine, to some extent, their own weaknesses as to what made them become attracted to this particular person, having these particular qualities. And then from that point on, they'll become like Socrates. An unexamined life is not worth living. But you're no longer really talking about your life on the outside. You're talking about your life on the inside. How am I thinking about relationships? How am I thinking about guys? How am I thinking about who I am, what I am? And it's going to take you about 2, 3, 4 year process as a woman. And then you're going to come out. I mean, the relationship got rid of boredom, got rid of loneliness, got rid of hopelessness, meaninglessness. This man comes into your life, all of a sudden your life is like blossomed to something profound. Okay? It smells really, really good. And then 5 or 6 or 10 years later, this guy comes to you and says, I don't want to be with you. Women have a tendency of going to the psychological cave. And then while they're in it, a lot of things are happening on the inside. They may not be aware of it, but pieces are slowly being put together in a harmonious way. They begin to see things. They begin to gain some really great clarity about who and what they are and how men are. And then what happens after 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Remember, they are broken. After 3, 4, 5 years, the woman says, I think I want to like date. I don't want to be alone for the rest of my life. They go out there, but now they know how to ask questions. They know how to pay attention to, you know, the person on the other side, their body language, what they're drinking, how much they're drinking, if they're using profanities, if they have any addictions. And so they're not going to allow their emotions to guide them. They're going to be very objective. What am I? Who am I? What's going to work for me? What exactly do I want for my life? Now that's a good kind of brokenness, because the end of that brokenness, you have clarity. But that clarity comes with a great amount of heartache, you know. And most people don't really resurrect like that. I mean, that's why America is a land of therapists. For the most part, when people are broken, they never recover. They kind of push in the closet here and there, but eventually it's going to leak out. Yeah. Kimoni. Yeah. Yeah.
Satisfied.
Right. That's everywhere. That's everywhere. Everywhere, every man. No, not necessarily. First of all, even though I'm making some blanket statements, there are always going to be exceptions. You're going to find some women who are pretty trashy and nasty. You're going to equally find some men who are trashy and nasty as well. You have people with different capacities. There are certain men who have been contaminated from early on in life, contaminated in the sense that they've had parents, they've had relatives. Maybe they've gone to the church from the age of 2 and they've read this, they've read that, they've had conversations about perhaps more mature things, refined things in life. And so when they step into life, they're a bit more cautious, they're a bit more self-reflective. But generally speaking, and it's something historical. I mean, when you go back into various cultures, you realize that for whatever the reasons are, maybe it's the curse, imposed upon men and women, that men have to grow very, very, very slow. I mean, men are usually behind by anywhere from 7 to about 15 years. So if you're 20 and you're going out with a 20-year-old guy, the truth is you have to wait for a long time for him to grow up. Why that is, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a biologist, I'm not an anthropologist. I have no idea why men are just wired in such a sucky way. Okay? Are you going to be able to find men who are mature? Absolutely. You must also realize that when you live in an environment such as this, where our music is trash, advertisements are trash, culture is trash, almost everything you touch right now in the 21st century in America, at least in California. I don't know how Texas is, okay? Because, look, there are 2 components you need to understand about diversity. You have a sort of diversity that everything just clashes and creates chaos and disharmony. And then you have another kind of diversity where things come together cohesively, harmoniously. It's kind of like an orchestra. If you have 5 people playing different instruments, but these instruments are not coming together, gelling together well, then you're going to leave with a good amount of headache. That's not the diversity you want. If that's a little too abstract, go to a buffet, whatever food you like. Try a little this, little that, and then go home after an hour of trying different kinds of dishes. And you go home and no doubt you're going to first get a stomachache, then you're going to have indigestion, then you're going to have diarrhea. Well, that's not a good buffet. That's not a good diversity for your tummy. If on the other hand, you take a little salad, then some pasta, maybe some drinks, maybe some garlic bread, that's diversity. You know what you like, you know how things go well together. You eat, you go home, and you're perfectly fine. When you look at the current climate, you're being exposed to too many things, and those things, most of them are just not good for you, So this day and age, you don't have men who are very healthy, you don't have women who are very healthy. And it may be that women may be more ready to be in a relationship than men are, but just because you're ready, it doesn't mean that, the intellectual, emotional readiness is very different than practical readiness. You need role models. You need to kind of be able to look at your father, look at your mother, to some extent like them, to some extent follow in their footsteps. That kind of gets you ready. In this day and age, when you have no role models, from the age 5, you're on your own. Well, by the time you figure things out, you're like 90. But as a cautionary tale, I think if you are a young woman in this culture, first, women always are going to have the bad end of the stick, always. Because men, it's going to take them a long time to become solid and mature and stable. So never go out with someone your own age. Always go out with someone who's 5 to 10 years older than you are, just to be safe. And the other thing you need to understand, that women, if there is a God, they have been given a gift. Women have been given a gift. Consider, for example, let's just say you're heterosexual. Or maybe not, doesn't really matter. God or nature has given you a GPS. At a certain point in your life, and it's going to happen relatively quickly, you're going to say, I want a child. And do you know what a child will do to your life? You'll no longer desire to be in a world created by men, this vicious corporative world, where you have to be You have to cheat, lie, and deceive like men do to get to the top. You want to stay home and you want to take care of your child. And that child will give you meaning, they'll give you purpose, and you'll become like a cougar. You'll do whatever you can to protect your child. And if you had any interest in your man, that interest disappears. It gets transferred into your child. You look at your man, you say, I love you, but I need money. I love you, but I need a 2-bedroom. I love you, I need a minivan. I love you, I need private school for our son. You see? And that GPS will carry you for the next, 30, 40 years. And depending on your relationship with how you were with your parents, you're going to be the exact way with your own kid. If your parents always hovered around you, and that's how you want to be. If you saw your mom always being at home, it's going to take a Herculean effort for your husband to push you into the workforce and say, go out there, make some money. You want to stay there, be home, and protect your child. That's a great GPS. Men, the hell do they have? You know, in rare cases, you get Teresa of Avila. You get Mother Teresa, where they realize, no, I don't want to have a child. You know, I don't want to work. I just want to be like a Jesus Christ. As a woman, I want to go into the desert and figure out who I am, what I am. For the most part, confusion is men's domain. Being unstable is men's domain. Women don't have that, men do. Okay? So what you have in this particular current climate is that motherhood is delayed. You want to go out there and figure yourself out. I don't really know what that means, but let's just say you want to go out there and figure yourself out. In this world of confusion, this diversity where nothing fits anything, it's going to take you a long time. And by the time you figure things out, the only thing you figure out is how damaged you are, how messed up you are. Brokenness.
So, didn't any of these here, Siddhartha, Buddha, Siddhartha, didn't I've noticed that they don't talk about, did they have any heartbreaks in their lives?
Yeah.
That they learned from? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they gotta have something. They can't be, oh yeah,
Well, if you think about learning something as a flower, then you should think of it this way. You have a seed that goes into the earth. Then if it gets the proper nourishment, you have tiny little stems coming out of the ground. Then if it's not demolished or stepped upon by people or animals, then you have some sort of a trunk slowly getting thicker and thicker. Then you have branches coming out. Then if, again, you have aid from the climate, from the environment, right? Then you have these things that are slowly budding. Then they fully blossom and become a flower. So when you talk about learning, you're talking about a flower that's fully blossomed. The petals have opened. That's long ways away. When you talk about the life story of Siddhartha, you need to understand that the Buddha was really just a sucky human being for the longest time. You know, at least traditionally for about 19 years. You know. And so what happens to him is that, and it's very rare, because he saw things that you and I see on a daily basis. Reuben, you're no longer a young man. You're old, like me. You're ugly like me. You're smelly like me, right? Any 20-year-old who passes you and I should kind of internalize that one experience. Wow, Reuben has gray hair. Amir has no hair. Amir is limping and as he's walking. These are all signs of old age. But how many young people internalize that experience to the point that it leads them to paralysis? It's not that you don't see old age. It's not that you're not impacted by old age, because all of us are from time to time. The problem is we soon forget, that soon you'll get old. You don't think like that. You say Reuben, you feel sorry for Reuben, you feel sorry for Amir, and then you just kind of go out there and live your own life, right? The Buddha, for whatever the reasons are, maybe he was lucky, maybe he was unlucky, I'm not really quite sure. I'm talking about being broken, that he sees old age, but for some strange reason, he just happens to be in the right place. I'm not quite sure how that's possible. I don't know how you create the right space inside people. I'm not talking about mere moments of inspiration. Inspiration means absolutely nothing, because inspiration lives within this grand space called human nature. You're forgetful, you're lazy, you're stupid, you have desires, ambitions, and that moment of inspiration, it's like a tiny little seed. It's going to get crushed by human nature, by habits, by addictions, by bad ways of thinking and feeling about things. So this guy, this tiny little 19-year-old goes somewhere and says, man, I'm going to get old. What are you going to do when that knowledge goes inside you? How are you going to enjoy your youth? When you see your friends out there laughing and smiling, talking about stupid things, how are you going to enjoy yourself? Why? Because when you say, I'm going to get old, all of a sudden your relationship with time begins to change. Time goes really, really fast. Young people are really stupid for thinking that the time is this frozen thing in space. I will forever remain 20. That's not what happened some 3,000 years ago. But then you have the second encounter, which is, well, when you get old, you get sick. All of us in this class have gotten sick. You lay in bed, you're coughing, you have the flu, you can't get yourself out of bed, your body aches, your husband, your wife, your companion, your friend comes in with soup, and all of a sudden you have this realization that you're a burden to everybody's life. You're a burden to yourself, you're a burden to everybody else, and you feel bad, you feel ashamed, and then you whisper to yourself, oh, when I get better, I'm going to become a vegan. I'm going to be on diet all the time. I'm going to exercise, I'm going to go on hikes. And how long is that inspiration going to last for you? Right? And then, and your relationship with food changes, your relationship with your body changes. And then the third experience is death. I'll get old, I'll get sick, and I'll die. Your life is turned upside down, man. The hell are you going to do with that brokenness? Where are you going to go? You're going to go to your dad and say, Dad, you knew I was going to get old. Dad, you knew I was going to get sick. You knew I was going to die. And once I get old, the sofas don't matter, the cars don't matter, the degrees don't matter. Once I get sick, laying in bed, for the longest time you've been telling me, go to school, get degrees, make money, get married, have children. I'm old. I have no companionship in old age. No one understands what it means to lose abilities. When you're sick, who's going to lay next to me and understand me? No one. If you knew that I'm going to get old and sick and eventually die, why did you give birth to me? Why did you create me? You're the villain, not God, not Satan. You made this happen. You bring me into this world, and there are no solutions to old age, to sickness and death. There are no solutions once your relationship with time begins to change. And do you know how alone and isolated you'll begin to feel? You'll have no friends. You'll have no companionship. And even if you do, most of your conversations with your companions will be about gossip, very superficial. Who's going to understand you? And by the time you get to that space, you will never open your mouth to talk about things that are very, very important to you, like old age, like sickness, like the shortness of time, how lonely you are, how sad and depressed you are, how the world has all these things to offer you, and yet you're not interested. I mean, you need to understand the enormity of the saying in the gospel, first seek the kingdom of God and everything else shall be given unto you. Once you have the kingdom of God, you will lose interest in anything and everything down here. What are you going to have? آن کس که تو را شناخت جان را چه کند. That whoever has self-knowledge, they become their own best friend. They have no need for a wife or a husband. They have no need for friends out there. They're self-sufficient. They can sit and they can consult their own intellect and they can write. They can do prose, they can do poetry, they can do music, they can go on a hike because they know that no one will ever understand them. They'd rather be alone than with others. Now, let's talk about how you can become broken in the right way. I'm sorry, do you have any other questions or comments and items? Did you have something more? Beginning? Sure? Hello? So, to talk about brokenness in a way that's healthy, first, since we were talking about Buddhism, let me just continue talking about the tradition for a bit longer and then we'll move on to something different.
Jesus was broken a few times.
Who? He's no good. He's no good. No, Jesus is no good.
He didn't have sadness.
No. Jesus is no good. Yeah.
What about Buddha? What about him?
The Buddha was good. Jesus was no good.
Okay, so how? Oh, he was. What way was he broken though?
Who? Okay, let me kind of, okay. Jesus is like the Mozart of spiritual teachers. When you are a Mozart, you're a really, really bad teacher. And the reason is you're just gifted from the moment you're born. You don't know what it means to sacrifice. You don't know what it means to struggle. You're born, you play the violin. The moment you come out of your mother's womb, you don't say, Mom, you don't cry, you don't scream, you say, where's my violin? How many kids do you see being born and the next minute they say, where's my piano? No one. Buddha, on the other hand, is a great teacher. Why? Because he has lived the human world. He has tasted money. He has tasted passion. He has tasted marriage. He has tasted fatherhood. He has tasted power. He has tasted love and parents and all that stuff. He's tasted what it means to live and be born and be seasoned in a culture that's healthy. He's tasted all of that. But then he's also tasted what it means to come to a place where nothing makes you happy. See, Jesus was always miserable, not the Buddha. The Buddha can speak for humanity, but not Jesus. Jesus is a hippie. Jesus is good for very, very advanced people. I mean, you can't guide an AA meeting if you have never been drunk. You can't guide an AA meeting if you've never had addictions. Moses is good, not Jesus. You know, Jesus is like calculus 4. Yes?
Say that Jesus was a better teacher, shower, and like with his power, with his power, with he was able to show through his acts of miracles.
A couple of things. First, forgive me for interrupting you. I'm old. Yeah. There is something really tragic about experience. I've been on the stage for about 30 years. When someone raises their hand and just says a couple of things, I can just know the rest. And it's not your fault, it's not my fault. I don't mean to be disrespectful. Let me first of all just say that all teachers are losers. They're all failures. Every single one of them. If you're talking about teachers who are containers of wisdom, the first principle, the first law is that wisdom is non-transferable. It's non-negotiable. I can't give you my wisdom. It's impossible. Tell me, you're African American. Tell me what it means to be African American. Let me feel it. It's called compassion. Grab me, my emotions, my intellect, put them in your shoes. Tell me how it feels when you go to Safeway and people look at you weirdly. Tell me. You can't. I have to go through it myself. The only thing any good teacher can do is provide you a physical space and keep pushing those buttons in that physical space. And then every time you break or you go nuts or you want to throw a temper tantrum, they hold you, protect you, guide you, so you don't destroy yourself. So that's the first thing you need to understand about teachers. No teacher can ever give you his or her wisdom. End of story. Was Malcolm X able to? Was Jesus able to? 12 losers of disciples. None of them were any good. Muhammad. Do you know Muhammad? He became a prophet at the age of 40. He died at the age of 62. And you know what he did for those 22 years? He fought. Every single day. Moses. He rescues his people, if the stories are historically accurate, for example. Parts the Red Sea, goes away for a couple of minutes to get the tablets. What does he see? People just go back to the old stupid selves that they've always been. Lao Tzu says, I'm disgusted by my own people. I want to leave altogether. Gilgamesh. This is a man who's been touched by love, broken by love. The gods love him. He's got wisdom. What does he do? He writes. You know what writing is? You lock yourself in a room and you just write. But why the hell would you want to do that? Won't you find ears that can listen to you? You can find ears that listen. But decoding the things you tell them, that's a different story. So number one, all teachers are failures. It doesn't mean they won't come on the stage to talk. Teachers are like, you know, when you drink too much water, you're going to use the bathroom. When you think too much, when you feel too much and process those emotions through your intellect, what are you doing? You're eating food, intellectual food, emotional food. What happens to your belly? It gets big. What happens when you eat too much? You got to use the restroom. Why do people go on the stage? They shit through their mouths. It's called wisdom. So people like Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Jordan Peterson, Eckhart Tolle, if they have any wisdom, they're not there for you and I. Do you go to the bathroom because you're in love with the bathrooms at Laney College? Of course not. You go there because your belly is full of liquid, you want to get rid of it. The same thing. Now, if you want to follow Jesus, if you think he's a great teacher for you, make sure you have the prerequisites. And prerequisites are the following. He doesn't care about your race. He doesn't care how the world has pushed you around. None of those things matter to him. So if you go to him, if you find him ever, and if you want to sit there and look at him as a therapist, he's not a therapist for your body and what has happened to your body and your biology. He doesn't care for whether or not you had a father. He doesn't care if you're African American. Doesn't care if you're a woman or a man or gay or transgender. None of those things matter to him. The only thing he wants to be around, your soul. Do you have one of those? Because that's the thing he wants to speak to. Moses, on the other hand, is a different story. You need Moses, not Jesus. Moses is about social reformation. It's about justice. It's about white and black and brown and yellow being equal. It's about having a home. It's about having Medicare. It's about going to school for free. Making sure that your neighbor is not coveting your husband, or your neighbor is not coveting your wife. So jealousy doesn't happen. So friction doesn't happen. So friendships don't end. If you follow Jesus, I'm here to make sure that you hate your mom, that you hate your dad. Because if you're still attached to your mom, you need to understand you can't serve two masters. Jesus is a monogamist. It's only his way. And if you can't do his way, you'll get lost.